Hello dear viewers, and welcome back to the ancient dwarven hold of our ancestors. Today I shall be talking about the game The Black Grimoire Cursebreaker. Cursebreaker, which I shall hereon refer to it as, is a story-based role-playing and adventure game developed and published by Ultima Games. It was released in October 2024. Before we get started, dear viewer, if I could just ask that if you like what I do down here in the Ancient Hold, then perhaps consider subscribing to the channel, give the video a thumbs up and maybe leave a comment with your thoughts on the game. I reply to everyone that does. Lastly, I haven't banged on about the book in a while, so I thought I might just mention it. If you like fantasy tied in with themes of dealing with depression and such, then maybe you'll enjoy Grim Journey. It all helps to support my little channel and my further endeavours. Right, Cursebreaker. It was one of those games that I had on my wish list for a while that I didn't pay too much attention to until I received an email stating it was now fully released. I clicked upon the Steam page and gave it a look. It states something about being similar to RuneScape and Ultima Online with an interesting art style. I haven't played either of those games, but I know a little bit about them. RuneScape, with its different versions, is a kind of isometric MMORPG where you're thrust into a world in which you decide what you want to do, rather than be spirited along an experience similar to an MMO like World of Warcraft. The game involves levelling numerous skills by partaking in those skills. For example, if you fish a lot, your fishing skill will increase, if you mine, your mining will go up, and so forth. The gameplay seems to evolve very much around levelling those skills and going on your own adventures through the land. Combat involves mostly right-clicking a foe to begin attacking while using some additional abilities that you can learn. I'm most likely grossly oversimplifying things here and likely have no real idea what's going on there, but this is my simple understanding. Ultima Online is another old-school MMORPG that began in the late 90s, existing in the Ultima game series universe. It has a similar perspective and involves the levelling of numerous skills as well. I know even less about this one, but it seems interesting, and I'm sure there's lots of players out there that enjoy their time with it no end. Having not played either of those games, I wasn't totally sure what Cursebreaker would be like, and whether I would like it. But I had some idea at least, and thought having a go with a more modern single-player version of those games could be fun, so here we are. When you first take a look at Cursebreaker, you'll notice it has a simple and somewhat unique graphical style. It is three-dimensional, with 3D objects and characters and such, but is very simple in nature. At first, at least, the world will come across as one of those that appears to have gotten stuck somehow, and not loaded in the textures for things, for there is very little, if any of that going on. Things are mostly flat, singular colours with a little shading. Obviously this is on purpose, but it is quite striking in its simplicity, and I imagine it could have a significant impact on your impression of the game, and perhaps if you want to play it. Honestly, to me at first it was a little jarring, but after a while I got used to it. The player characters and NPCs are simple and provide a decent representation in game, but they fit in with the world by not featuring any kind of texture mapping or further detail themselves. Weapons and tools and such all look fine and represent what they're supposed to. Again, it would be cool to have some more detail going on here, but it is what it is. For what they were going for here, I think the developers have done well. For me, on my machine at least, the game runs well, with the occasional stutter, but on the whole, I didn't experience any hard crashes or game-breaking bugs. Like a lot of these retro-style games, once you've been playing it for a while, you really don't think about it anymore, and the charm grows on you. When it comes to world building, the open map of Cursebreaker is quite a large one, with all sorts of features, like towns, ruins, forests, towers and so forth, like you might expect from a fantasy game. You will find yourself in strange caves, up some mountains and in dangerous dungeons as you seek adventure through the land. There are things to discover all over the world, and you will be rewarded for seeking them out. The soundscape is fairly clean and simple as well. The music does well to set the mood and accompanies the gameplay really well. Things sound like they should, and that is certainly a good thing. You will soon have the chopping sound when you chop trees, or the rustling sound when you forage herbs and plants and such, repeating over and over as you work to increase your skill levels. There is no voiceover in the game, with all the talking between characters featuring only in text form. The usual indie company reasons I would imagine, and although I would prefer to have some voice work, if only for the main quest stuff, I can understand that it would be quite an expense and everything else. You will begin the game prologue alive, which is quite a nice thing to start as. You are a lord of the land and live in a large mansion with servants and rooms and all sorts. There are some introduction quests and a little story to get through. As an aside, dear viewers, I would scour the mansion while you can and pick up as many skill books as you can find in bookcases and elsewhere. These are books you can consume which will grant a certain amount of XP for a specific skill, and are something you should always grab whenever you see them. Once you complete these initial few quests, you will suddenly come to somewhere else, and not so alive as you were before. It seems you've been dead for quite some time now, but have now been resurrected as an undead revenant in the service of a necromancer, and not a particularly nice one at that. This is when the game begins proper. You'll need to fight your way out of the graveyard you're in, before finding yourself at a small outpost in a strange land. From here the game will open up, and allow you to progress how you wish with regards to doing quests and levelling up your skills. There is a main quest you can follow that will unlock some cool rewards and skill XP, which can be quite useful and of course progress the story. But the world is open, and you are able to go almost anywhere you like. I say almost because enemies in the world are set levels and don't scale with you, which I like. This means that certain areas will have powerful enemies, which you'll likely have to come back to later lest they destroy you in just a few hits. There are no player levels per se. Rather, a character is defined by their skill levels and the equipment they are wearing. You can craft different armour and weapons which will increase certain stats, like melee protection and damage, or mana and regeneration and so forth. There are also some powerful rewards, but crafting remains relevant. There is this interesting feature of heavier armour providing a lot of physical damage reduction, but actually negative magical resistance, which means you'll need to carry different pieces of armour to fight off different types of mobs. For instance, spellcasters or melee ranged physical damage dealers. I imagine this could also be a bit of a bugger, that you have to carry another set of armour around with you, taking up precious bag space. Inventory management is quite the thing in Cursebreaker, and I imagine it's similar to those older MMOs that I talked about. You have a very limited number of slots in your inventory that become more precious to you as you are out and about doing stuff. Early game, you'll be maxing out inventory spots constantly as you try to juggle bag space. You'll have tools used for gathering items, potions, herbs, ore, wood, and so on. There is a quest that can be picked up at any stables which I would recommend you grab and complete quickly. This will give you access to Horsey, which is a massive quality of life help. This is because Horsey comes with their own fairly large inventory, which you can fill up and then send them off back to town to deposit in the bank and then return to you. This is a godsend and something I wish I'd unlocked earlier. Further to Horsey, there are other bags you can acquire in-game that only take up one slot in your inventory, but can be opened up to provide a number of extra slots. Bag within a bag. These are very welcome and help to alleviate the inventory management stress a little bit more. I do wish the developers would make a few more items stackable, as it would help with some of the frustration that comes with inventory management. Rather than having bags within the bags, I'd also prefer to have multiple bag slots that open up all at the same time. It is not a big issue, but I do think managing items could be slightly less frustrating. Perhaps this is just how they want things to be, and that's fair enough. As mentioned, there is a banking game where you can store everything that you pick up on your travels. This means you don't have to carry everything with you all the time. Everything is stackable, even things that won't stack in your bag, which does help with storage, and I imagine if they didn't do this, bank tabs would become too large and unwieldy. The bank can be accessed at numerous locations in the world, which is nice. The general gameplay here in Cursebreaker is one of farming materials, fishing, mining and woodcutting, along with crafting items from the materials you've gathered. This is, along with fighting mobs, the main game loop. So straight away, if you're not into this sort of gameplay, of performing the same tasks over and over, grinding out skill levels, then you're not going to get on with this too well. But dear viewer, if that was all that the game was, then perhaps it might be a bit too shallow for me. But the game has numerous little features that are interesting to discover, which can keep you coming back. There are quests and activities in the game that require you to have a skill to a certain level. There are nice rewards for grinding out some levels, and it can be quite thematic too, like having a certain woodsman level to clear out fallen trees that block a path. Cursebreaker has that fluttering of cool little things that can really make or break a game like this, I feel. There are some interesting characters, interesting events going on at different locations throughout the world, and just some nice features that can reward your hard work. A vendor exists in one of the main cities that has various special items that can ease your adventuring, such as extra bags, a teleport back to the city, and even a sprint spell. These are purchased with a special currency that you can acquire by completing achievements in the game. Achievements can be anything like reaching certain levels in skills or completing quests and all sorts. There are special skills and things you can learn from trainers in town, which can boost those skills as well as provide some interesting side benefits. We should probably talk about the combat for a bit. Combat in Cursebreaker is a relatively simple affair. To begin, you click on an attackable NPC or non-player character, and your character will begin auto-attacking them. Damage dealt and accuracy of your attacks are affected by your weapon, your attack skill, and your overall stats. Once the enemy inevitably starts attacking you back, the damage you suffer depends on your armour and defensive stats, as well as using things like a shield. Most of the combat is auto-attacking, either in melee, ranged, or using spellcasting, though you will unlock some special abilities that can add to the rotation. The extra skills add some agency to proceedings, but let's be clear, if you're here for the combat, you will not be particularly excited for what you can do here. There are also numerous buffs that you can acquire for combat, from both drinking potions and casting spells. You can chug health pots a la Elder Scrolls, but it does take a moment to drink and the game isn't paused. Healing spells also require some sort of reagent, so you can only spam them for so long, which helps the balance of things, I feel. Cursebreaker has numerous areas in the game which feature tough enemies for you to fight and avoid, and you'll have to do both throughout your time with the game. There are several quest mobs that you will need to kill that will smash you to the ground if you're not prepared for a fight, and some of these will come up early on in the game and will linger in your quest log for quite some time before you feel powerful enough to take them on. Some of these fights are decided by how many attacks you manage to dodge or resist, otherwise you are pummeled mercilessly. There are a few balancing concerns like this, but generally the flow of combat is in a good place. When you die, usually in combat due to a good thumping, you'll respawn at the closest resurrection point, which is a safe spot somewhere in the world. For you cannot save the game in Cursebreaker. Just like an MMO, the game always preserves your current state and doesn't allow you to reload after getting killed or finding yourself in an unfavourable position. Like some of these older games where you die, you will drop items on the ground which, should you wish to cover them, will entail you traipsing back to the spot where you died to pick them up again. As you can imagine, when you do die, it is usually in a perilous location, surrounded by big scary monsters. This can make dying more stressful than it might be, as you now have to get back to your body and recover the items without getting killed for a second time. I think perhaps the developer understood some of the stress of dying and dropping items, because you don't drop a lot of stuff on the first death without recovering, I found. Usually something from your bags and maybe one equipped item. If I was unfortunate and died before recovering the items from my first death, then I tended to lose more equipped stuff as well. Basically, every time you die without recovering previously dropped items, you will drop more and more important stuff until you're running around the place with nothing on. Further to my assumption by the devs thinking it is a bit harsh, you can actually pay gold to a scavenger NPC nearby that will give you back some of your items. This is a very good thing. To be honest, I don't really like this dropping of items on death all that much, as sometimes you just have to run a long distance and strive to avoid big baddies in the hope of retrieving your gear. It is just a stress I would rather not have, but I get why they put it in the game and perhaps why people might enjoy this feature. It adds to the danger and all that, and perhaps encourages you to play at your best. Enjoyment of Cursebreaker very much hinges on the skill system, with almost everything you do in game advancing one skill or another. There are a few things that can make gaining skills easier, like unlocking certain traits, tools, and even herbs you can fish up with the appropriate fishing skill. There are little industries you can partake in too, like a sawmill or a cotton farm, which can help acquire resources and provide you with a special currency that you can then use to buy special items. These help, but ultimately be prepared to grind out skill levels. a lot. And I would recommend, dear viewers, that you don't miss out on any of them, as you'll need to have certain skills at certain levels at certain times, lest you be blocked out of a quest or new upgrade or something else. In fact, I would bear in mind to try and get all skills to 25, as there is a quest that requires this to allow you to learn new traits for all of your skills. I would very much like to see them decouple this, as it essentially punishes you for going with a specific build, like only fighting melee or only spellcasting. Knowing this beforehand though, dear viewer, you won't be as surprised as I was. The developers do seem to be aware of this, as a recent dev update talked about sorting this out some, so you don't need to get every skill to 25. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Cursebreaker. It very much felt like I was playing an MMO, but in single player. For although you can sometimes see other players in the city, you have no other interaction with them that I could see. I imagine this is what RuneScape might be to play, but the world is open to just you, with no competition from other players. I have done and still do play MMOs on a regular basis, so perhaps I have the right mind for it, with all the grinding and farming involved. Indeed, you can easily sink a good few hours into it before you realise just how long you've been playing. And there is a story here, but it isn't some great grand tale. It's not terrible by any means, but don't be expecting questlines on the level of Witcher 3 or Baldur's Gate or something. It is serviceable though, at least, helping to push you onward and fleshes things out a bit, giving you some motivation. And there are other questlines in the game that have a fair length to them too, which are interesting to follow through with, which is nice. There are things that I would like to see looked at a bit, like stacking certain items or smelting ore giving mining skill rather than smithing, along with the failure rate of mining and woodcutting in general. I do believe playing as melee is noticeably more challenging. I could easily kite baddies forever with a range setup using a bow or wand or spell, whereas with melee I had to face tank mobs where not evading or blocking a couple of hits in a row will quickly see you squished to the ground. There are some skills that help a bit when you unlock them, but melee definitely feels like it's the more stressful way to be playing. Some mobs do seem to be more resistant to certain damage types, which does encourage you to mix things up a little. It was cool being in this big wide world with secret spots here and there, great beasties to fight or run away from, and places to explore. Slow and incremental progress is the name of the game here. Getting your smithing up to make a new sword, increasing your sorcery so you can learn a weapon enchant, levelling up fishing so you can catch some special fish. This is the experience here. As I keep saying, if you are of the mind of this sort of thing, then you will enjoy this game a lot. But if you aren't a fan of this MMO style grind, then I don't think you're going to get on with Cursebreaker. It is one of those Marmite games. You are either going to get really into this, spending hours grinding, or you're just going to hate it. So bear that in mind, dear viewer. The game is just under £13 on Steam, and there is a demo you can download too, before committing to purchase it, should you wish to have a look first. So a nice cheap game for you to check out by an independent developer. It does goes to show how good games can be from small developers nowadays, which is a testament to their abilities. All round good stuff. And there we go, dear viewer. Another video from me here down in the ancient hold. I thank you for watching this video so far. I hope you're doing well, and I shall see you next time.